Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hey. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hey. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Rakshamam. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Charine. Trinadapi Sunichena Tarar Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniyasa Dahari. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Kevalam. Kalo Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatir Anyatha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, in the past couple of weeks, we heard the pastime which is known as Brahma Vimohana Leela. How Lord Brahma tried to play a trick upon Krishna, but Krishna showed him that when you try to do that, the trick lands upon you. So we heard how Brahma stole all the boys and cows and calves, and how Krishna maintained all the cows and cowherd boys for 1 year by expanding himself. And we heard how Lord Brahma became bewildered. And in our last class, Lord Brahma prayed, begging forgiveness for trying to play a trick on his Lord and Master. So the episode today picks up from that point. It's entitled, we're going to do 3 episodes today. This one is called 1 Year Later in Brajabhumi. Brajabhumi is another name for Vrindavan. In this way, Lord Brahma, master of this universe, after offering humble and respectful obeisances unto Krishna and circumambulating Krishna 3 times, Brahma was ready to return to his abode, which is known as Satyaloka or Brahmaloka. And by his gesture, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave Lord Brahma his permission to return. As soon as Brahma left, Lord Sri Krishna immediately appeared, just as he had on the very day the cows and cowherder boys had vanished. Krishna had left his friends on the bank of the Yamuna while they were engaged in lunch. And although he returned exactly 1 year later, the cowherder boys thought that Krishna had returned within a second. So that is the way of Krishna's different energies and activities. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sanivishta. Krishna himself is residing in everyone's heart in his 4-handed form known as Paramatma. And it is Krishna in the heart who causes both remembrance and forgetfulness. All living entities are controlled by the supreme energy of the Lord, and sometimes they remember and sometimes they forget their constitutional position. The living entity's constitutional position is to be the loving servitor of Krishna. But the living entity has free will and can choose not to serve Krishna. Krishna's friends, being controlled in such a way, could not understand that for 1 whole year they were absent from the bank of the Yamuna and were under the spell of Lord Brahma's illusion. So when Krishna appeared before the cowherder boys, they thought, "Oh, Krishna has returned within a minute." The cowherder boys began to laugh, thinking that Krishna was not willing to leave their lunch time company. They were very jubilant and invited Krishna. "Oh, our dear friend, you have come back so quickly. All right, we have not as yet begun our lunch. We have not even taken 1 morsel of food. So please come and join us and let us eat together." Krishna smiled and accepted their invitation, and Krishna began to enjoy the lunchtime company of his friends. While eating, Krishna was thinking, "These cowherder boys believe that I have come back within a second, but they do not know that for the last year I have been involved with the mystic activities of Lord Brahma." And after finishing their lunch, Krishna and his friends in cabs began to return to their Brajabhumi homes. And while passing, they enjoyed seeing the dead carcass of Asura in the shape of a gigantic serpent. When Krishna returned home to Brajabhumi, he was seen by all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Krishna was wearing a peacock feather in his helmet, which was also decorated with forest flowers. Krishna was also garlanded with flowers and painted with different colored minerals collected from the caves of Govardhan Hill. Govardhan Hill is always famous for supplying natural red dye. And so Krishna and his friends painted their bodies with them. Each of them had a bugle made of buffalo horn, and a stick and a flute, and each called his respective calves by their particular names. They were so proud of Krishna's wonderful activities that while entering the village, they all sang Krishna's glories. All the gopis in Vrindavan saw beautiful Krishna entering the village. The cowherder boys composed nice songs describing how they were saved from being swallowed by the great serpent and how the serpent was killed. Some of the boys described Krishna as the son of Yashoda, and others described him as the son of Nanda Maharaj. They told their parents, "Oh, Krishna is so wonderful that he saved us from the clutches of the great serpent and killed him." But little did the boys know that 1 year had passed since the killing of the Aghasura demon. So that ends our first episode. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this second episode is philosophical in nature. And this is entitled The Psychology of Self-Centeredness. In this regard, Maharaj Parikshit asked Shukadeva Goswami how the inhabitants of Vrindavan suddenly developed so much love for Krishna, although Krishna was not a member of any of their families. Maharaj Parikshit inquired, "O Shukadeva Goswami, during the absence of the original cowherder boys, when Krishna expanded himself, why is it that the boys' parents became more loving towards Krishna than to their own sons? And why did the cows become so loving toward the calves more than toward their own calves?" Shukadeva Goswami told Maharaj Parikshit that actually every living being is most attached to his or her own self. Outward paraphernalia, such as home, family, friends, country, society, wealth, opulence, and reputation, are all only secondary in pleasing the living entity. They please only because they bring pleasure to the self. And it is for this reason that one is self-centered and attached to his or her body and self more than one is to relatives like wife, children, and friends. If there is some immediate danger to one's own person, he or she first of all takes care of oneself, then others. And that is natural. That means, more than anything else, one loves his or her own self. The next important object of affection after one's own self is one's material body. A person who has no information of the spirit soul is very much attached to his or her material body, so much so that even in old age, one wants to preserve the body in so many artificial ways, thinking that one's old and broken body can be saved. Everyone is working hard day and night just to give pleasure to his or her own self under either the bodily or spiritual conception of life. We are attached to material possessions because they give pleasure to the senses or to the body. The attachment to the body is there only because the I the spirit soul is within the body. Similarly, when one is further advanced, he or she knows that the spirit soul is pleasing because it is part and parcel of Krishna. So ultimately, it is Krishna who is pleasing and all attractive. Krishna is the super soul of everything. And in order to give us this information, Krishna descends and tells us that the all-attractive center is Krishna himself. Without being an expansion of Krishna, nothing can be attractive. Whatever is attractive within the cosmic manifestation is due to Krishna. Krishna is therefore the reservoir of all pleasure. The active principle of everything is Krishna, and highly elevated transcendentalists see everything in connection with Krishna. The Mahabhagavat, or highly advanced devotee, sees Krishna as the active principle in all movable and immovable living entities. Therefore, the Mahabhagavat sees everything within this cosmic manifestation in relation to Krishna. And for the fortunate person who has taken shelter of Krishna has everything, liberation is already there. One is no longer in the material world. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Brahma bhuta prasanatma na shochati na kangshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. Whoever is engaged in devotional service of Krishna is already on the Brahma Bhuta, or spiritual platform. The very name Krishna suggests piety and liberation. Anyone who takes shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna enters the boat for crossing over the ocean of nescience. For such a person, this vast expansion of the material manifestation becomes as insignificant as a hoofprint of a calf. Krishna is the center of all great souls, and Krishna is the shelter of all material worlds. For one who is on the platform of Krishna consciousness, Vaikuntha, or the spiritual world, is not far away. Such a person does not live within the material world, where there is danger at every step. Padam, padam, yad vipadam. And so, in this way, Krishna consciousness was fully explained by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. Shukadev even recited to King Parikshit the statements and prayers of Lord Brahma. These descriptions of Lord Krishna's pastimes with his cowherder boys, Krishna's eating with them on the bank of the Yamuna, and Lord Brahma's prayers unto Krishna are all transcendental subject matters. Anyone who hears, recites, or chants them surely gets all of one's spiritual desires fulfilled. So here is one reason to attend this weekly class. I'll repeat it. Anyone who hears, meaning you, recites, me, or chants them, surely gets all of one's spiritual desires fulfilled. Thus, Krishna's childhood appearance, his sporting with Balaram in Vrindavan, was described. So this reminds me of the famous verse in Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam Evang yoveti tatvataha tyaktva dehang punar janma nayeti mam eti sorjuna. Krishna said in this 4th chapter Bhagavad Gita verse that if you understand the nature of his appearance and activities, then this is your last material birth. For after this life, you are going to Krishna's abode. So it behooves us to attend this class every week and to try to pick up as much as possible what is being stated. That's why it says very early in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sutta Goswami told the sages at Naimisharanya that because he heard the Bhagavatam with rapt attention, he was now able to re-explain it to them. The original recitation of the Bhagavatam was by Shukadeva Goswami to Parikshit. This Krishna book is the 10th canto. So Sutta Goswami was in attendance and he heard Shukadev with rapt attention. Towards the end of Shukadev's narration, he made a statement and pointed to Sutta Goswami and predicted that in the future, Sutta Goswami would repeat Bhagavatam for the sages of Naimisharanya. And that is how Srimad Bhagavatam begins. After the introductory 3 or 4 verses, the scene is set. The sages are there in the forest of Naimisharanya at the beginning of Kali Yuga, and they are performing a sacrifice for 1,000 years for the benefit of the people of Kali Yuga, us. And Shonaka was their leader, and they selected Sutta Goswami just as Shukadev had predicted, and they wanted to hear from him what he heard from Shukadeva Goswami. That is called parampara. Just as I am reading this Krishna book, which was given by my spiritual master, and I am repeating it to you. Now, if you yourself repeat these narrations to your children, to your family members, then you are carrying on the disciplic succession. Let us now go to the last section for today's class. You see the picture behind me, and that is the pastime that we will now discuss. Thus, Sri Krishna, along with his elder brother Balaram, passed the childhood age known as Kaumara and stepped into the age of Pauganda from the 6th year up to the 10th. At that time, all the cowherder men conferred and agreed to give those boys who had passed their 5th year charge of the cows in the pasturing ground. So up to this point, the cowherder boys and Krishna were taking care of the calves. Now, because they have reached the 6th year, now they're given charge of the cows. Thus, given charge of the cows, Krishna and Balaram traversed Vrindavana, purifying the land with their lotus footprints. Accompanied by the cowherder boys and Balaram, Krishna brought forward the cows, playing on his flute. As Krishna entered the forest of Vrindavan, which was full of flowers, vegetables, and pasturing grass. The Vrindavan forest was as sanctified as the clear mind of a devotee, and was full of bees, flowers, and fruits. There were chirping birds and clear water lakes with waters that could relieve one of all fatigue. Sweet-smelling breezes blew always, refreshing the mind and body. So you see how Shukadeva Goswami is painting for us a picture of Vrindavan. And if you concentrate, if you pay close attention, then you can actually be transported to Vrindavan just by hearing attentively. Krishna with his friends and Balaram entered the forest, and seeing the favorable situation, desired to enjoy the atmosphere to the fullest extent. Krishna saw all the trees overloaded with fruits and fresh with twigs, and they were bending down to touch the ground as if welcoming Krishna, touching his lotus feet. Krishna was very pleased with the behavior of the trees, fruits, and flowers, and Krishna began to smile, realizing their desires. Krishna then spoke to his elder brother, Balaram. So you see, Balaram and Krishna are there behind me, although I am hiding Krishna. Let me move. Yes. So there's Krishna, and there's Balaram. So this is what Krishna told Balaram. My dear brother, you are superior to all of us, and your lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods. Just see how these trees, full with fruits and flowers, have bent down to worship your lotus feet. It appears that they are trying to get out of the darkness that has obliged them to accept the form of trees. Actually, these trees, born in the land of Vrindavan, are not ordinary living entities. Having held the impersonal point of view in their past lives, they have been put into the stationary condition of life. And now they have the opportunity of seeing you in Vrindavan. And they are praying for further advancement in spiritual life through your personal association. Generally, such living entities in the mode of darkness obtain the bodies of trees. The impersonalist philosophers are in that darkness, but they eradicate it by taking full advantage of your presence. And I think the drones that are buzzing all around you must have been your devotees in their past lives, for they cannot leave your company, because no one can be a better, more affectionate master than you. You are the supreme and original personality of Godhead, and the drones are just trying to spread your glories, chanting at every moment. I think some of them must be great sages, devotees of your lordship, and they are disguising themselves in the forms of drones because they are unable to give up your company even for a moment. My dear brother, you are the supreme worshipable Godhead. Just see how the peacocks are dancing before you in great ecstasy. The deer, whose behavior is just like that of the gopis, are welcoming you with the same kind of affection. And the cuckoos, who are residing in this forest, are welcoming you with their joyful, sweet cries, because they consider your appearance in their home as so auspicious. And even though they are trees and animals, these residents of Vrindavan are glorifying you. They are prepared to welcome you to the best of their ability, as is the practice of great souls in receiving another great soul at home. As for the land, it is so pious and fortunate because the footprints of your lotus feet are marking its body. It is quite natural for these Vrindavan inhabitants to thus receive a great personality like you. The herbs, creepers, and plants are also so fortunate just to touch your lotus feet. And by your touching the twigs with your fingernails, these small plants are also made glorious. As for the hills and rivers, they too are now glorious because you are glancing at them. And above all, the damsels of Raja, the gopis, are the most glorious because you embrace them with your strong arms, being attracted by their beauty. So in this way, Lord Krishna and Balaram began to enjoy the residents of Vrindavan to their full satisfaction as they herded the calves and cows on the bank of the Yamuna. In some places, Krishna and Balaram were accompanied by their friends. The boys were singing, imitating the humming sound of the drones, and accompanying Krishna and Balaram, who were garlanded with forest flowers. While walking, the boys sometimes imitated the quacking sound of the swans in the lakes, or when they saw the peacocks dancing, they imitated that before Krishna. Krishna also moved his neck, imitating the dancing, and thus making all of his friends laugh. The cows taken care of by Krishna had different names, and Krishna would call them with love. After hearing Krishna calling, the cows would immediately respond by mooing, and the boys would enjoy this exchange to their heart's content. They would all imitate the sound vibrations made by different kinds of birds, especially chokoras, peacocks, cuckoos, and bharadwajas. Sometimes, when they would see the weaker animals fleeing out of fear of the sounds of the tigers and lions, the boys, along with Krishna and Balaram, would imitate the animals and run away with them. When they felt some fatigue, they would sit down, and Balaram would put his head on the lap of one of the boys just to take rest. And Krishna would immediately come and begin massaging the legs of Balaram. And sometimes Krishna would take a palm fan and fan the body of Balaram, causing a pleasing breeze to relieve him of his fatigue. Some boys would sometimes dance or sing while Balaram took rest, and sometimes they would wrestle amongst themselves or jump. And when the boys were thus engaged, Krishna would immediately join them, catching their hands, and Krishna would enjoy their company, laughing and praising their activities. When Krishna would feel tired and fatigued, Krishna would take shelter of the root of a big tree or the lap of a cowherder boy and lie down. When Krishna would lie down with a boy or the root of a tree as his pillow, some of the boys would come and massage Krishna's legs, and some would fan Krishna's body with a fan made of leaves. Some of the more talented boys would sing in very sweet voices in order to please Krishna. Thus, very soon, Krishna's fatigue would go away. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, whose legs are tended by the goddess of fortune, shared himself with the cowherder boys as one of them, expanding his internal potency to appear exactly like an ordinary village boy. But despite Krishna's appearance just like a village boy, there were occasions when Krishna proved himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes men pose themselves as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and cheat innocent people. But they can only cheat. They cannot exhibit the potency of God. While Krishna was thus engaged in his transcendental pastimes, exhibiting his internal potency, along with his supermost fortunate friends, there occurred another chance for Krishna to exhibit superhuman powers of Godhead. Krishna's most intimate friends, Sridhama, Subala, and Stoka Krishna, addressed Krishna and Balaram with great love and affection. Dear Balaram, you are very powerful. Your arms are very strong. And you, Krishna, you are very expert in killing all kinds of disturbing demons. Will you kindly note that just near this place there is a big forest of the name Talavan. This forest is full of palm trees, and all the trees are filled with fruits. Some are falling down, and some of them are very ripe, even in the trees. So it is a very nice place, but because of a great demon, Dhenuka-asura, it is very difficult to go there. No one can reach the trees in order to collect the fruits. Dear Krishna and Balaram, this demon is present there in the form of a jackass, and he is surrounded by similar demon friends who also have assumed the same shape as jackasses. All of them are very strong, so it is very difficult to approach this place. Dear brothers, you are the only persons who can kill such demons. Other than you, no one can go there for fear of being killed. No animals even go there, and no birds are living there, for they have all left. So one can only appreciate the sweet aroma that is coming from that place. It appears that up until now, no one has tasted the sweet fruits there, either on the tree or on the ground. Dear Krishna, to tell you frankly, we are very attracted by this sweet aroma. Dear Balaram, if you like, let us all go there and enjoy these Talavan fruits. The aroma of these fruits is now spread everywhere. Why? Do you not smell it from here? So when Balaram and Krishna were thus petitioned by their intimate friends, Balaram and Krishna were inclined to please them, and with smiling faces, they proceeded towards the forest, surrounded by all their friends. And immediately upon entering Talavan, Balaram began to yank the trees with his arms, exhibiting the strength of an elephant. And because of this jerking, all the ripe fruits fell down to the ground. But upon hearing the sound of the falling fruits, the Dhenukasura demon, who was living there in the form of a jackass, approached with great force, shaking the whole field so that all the trees moved as if there were an earthquake. The demon appeared before Balaram and kicked his chest with his hind legs. At first, Balaram did not say anything, but with great anger, the demon kicked Balaram again, even more vehemently. So this time, Balaram immediately caught hold of the legs of the jackass with one hand and, wheeling him around, threw him into the top of the trees. And while he was being wheeled around by Balaram, Dhenukasura lost his life. Balaram threw the demon into the biggest palm tree about, and the demon's body was so heavy that the palm tree fell upon other trees, and so several of these trees fell down. It appeared as if a great hurricane had passed through the forest, and all the trees were falling down, one after another. This exhibition of extraordinary strength is not astonishing, because Balaram is the personality of Godhead known as Ananta Sheshanaga. He is holding up all the planets on the hoods of his millions of heads. He maintains the whole cosmic manifestation, exactly as horizontal and vertical threads hold the weaving of a cloth. After the demon had been thrown into the trees, all the friends and associates of Dhenukasura immediately all the friends and associates of Dhenukasura immediately assembled and began to attack Balaram and Krishna with great force. They were determined to retaliate and avenge the death of Dhenukasura. But Krishna and Balaram caught each of the jackasses by the hind legs and exactly in the same way wheeled them around. Thus Balaram and Krishna killed all of them, throwing them into the palm trees. Because of the dead bodies of the asses, there was a panoramic scene. It appeared as if clouds of various colors were assembled in the trees. Hearing of this great incident, the demigods from the higher planets showered flowers upon Krishna and Balaram and beat their drums and offered devotional prayers. And so, a few days after the killing of Dhenukasura, people began to come to the Dalavan forest in order to collect the fruits, and the animals began to return without fear to feed on the nice grasses grown there. Now comes your benediction for attending this class. Please listen with rapt attention. And so, just by chanting or hearing these transcendental activities and pastimes of the brothers Krishna and Balaram, one can amass pious activities. So when you amass pious activities, the result is you enjoy. When you amass impious activities, you suffer. So this weekly class is your weekly Ashirvad given to you by Prabhupada. Each week when we attend this class, we are amassing pious activities, and we will reap the fruits and enjoy. So, when Krishna, Balaram, and their friends entered the village of Vrindavan, they played their flutes, and the boys praised their uncommon activities in the forest. Their faces were decorated with tilak and smeared with the dust raised by the cows. And Krishna's head was decorated with a peacock feather. Both Krishna and Balaram played their flutes, and the young gopis were so joyous to see Krishna returning home. All the gopis in Vrindavan would remain very morose on account of Krishna's absence. All day they were thinking of Krishna in the forest, or they thought of Krishna herding cows in the pasture. But when the gopis saw Krishna returning, all their anxieties were immediately relieved, and they began to look at Krishna's face the way drones hover over the honey of the lotus flower. When Krishna entered the village, the young gopis smiled and laughed. Krishna, while playing the flute, enjoyed the beautiful smiling faces of the gopis. Then Krishna and Balaram were immediately received by their affectionate mothers, Yashoda and Rohini, who, according to the time's demands, began to fulfill the desires of their affectionate sons. Simultaneously, the mothers rendered service and bestowed benediction upon their transcendental sons. They took care of their children by bathing them and dressing them very nicely. Krishna was dressed in yellowish garments, and Balaram was dressed in bluish garments, and they were both given all sorts of ornaments and flower garlands. Being relieved of the fatigue of their day's work in the pasturing ground, they looked refreshed and very beautiful. They were given palatable dishes by their mothers, and they pleasantly ate everything. And after eating, they were seated nicely on clean bedding, and the mothers began to sing various songs of their activities. As soon as they sat down on the bedding, they quickly fell asleep. In this way, Krishna and Balaram used to enjoy Vrindavan life as cowherder boys. So, today we have been given a glimpse into Vrindavan. Those who are pure devotees relished and enjoyed this pastime. Hopefully that was all of you. So now I will sing Nasringa prayers to bless you all. Namaste Nara Singhaya Praklada Khlada Dayane Hiranyakashipu Vaksha Shilatankana Kalaye Ito Nasringa Parato Nrasingho Yato Yato Yami Tato Nrasingha Bahi Nasringa Hridaye Nasringho Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Tavakara Kamalavarena Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Nadahadi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Nrsinga Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadish Jai Jagadish Jai Jagadisha Hare Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paribrajaka Charja Astotra Satta Sri Siman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrind ki jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Syama Kunda Radha Kundagiri Govardhana ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Yamuna Devi ki jai. Ganga Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi ki jai. Krishna Book Class of Cologne, Panama ki jai. Krishna Book Students in Cologne ki jai. Krishna Book Students of Cologne ki jai. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol.